A Day in the Salt Marsh by Kevin Kurtz. The sun's coming up in the salt marsh, and the birds respond with song. If you decide to stay a while, you'll see changes all day long. It's 8 o'clock in the salt marsh. The tide is really low. The fiddler crabs upon the mud are putting on a show. They wave their claws to the left. They wave them to the right. And if a rival gets too close, the crabs will start to fight. It's 9 o'clock in the salt marsh. The tide is coming back. And on the muddy bank, you'll hear a quiet crack. A terrapin is eating while resting on the ground. It bites into a snail's shell and makes a popping sound. It's 10 o'clock in the salt marsh. The tide's now in the grass, and tiny periwinkle snails wait for the tide to pass. Clinging to the blades of grass, they climb without a sound, staying above the rising water to avoid being drowned. It's 11 o'clock in the salt marsh. The tide is getting high. Over in the tidal creek, a blue crab skitters by. The blue crab isn't picky and will eat most any dish. It even eats sea cucumber or a stinky piece of fish. It's 12 o'clock in the salt marsh. The tide is rising fast. A gray dolphin breaks the water as a dolphin swims right past. A gray fin breaks the water as a dolphin swims right past. Look, it's moving quickly, just like it's in a race. The small fish swim before it as the dolphin gives them chase. It's 1 o'clock in the salt marsh. The tide is very high. The grass is underwater, and yet it doesn't die. The cordgrass drinks salt water as the wind blows it about. The leaves hold in the water, but spit the salt back out. It's 2 o'clock in the salt marsh. A fish small and tiny, swimming all around the grass with scales so small and shiny. The marsh is like a nursery where little fish can hide. They eat the food that's brought their way with each new rising tide. It's 3 o'clock in the salt marsh, and on and off all day, running, splashing, swimming, the river otters play. Two pups begin to wrestle. A game of one-on-one. At first their mother watches, then joins them in the fun. It's 4 o'clock in the salt marsh, and over by the tidal creek stands a gray and stately bird with a long and pointy beak. The great blue heron waits quietly, but when it sees its prey, its beak hits the water, and the fish can't get away. It's 5 o'clock in the salt marsh, and the water's going down. Over on the muddy bank, a horseshoe crab is around. It doesn't seem to move at all, yet if you look and smell, it's not the live horseshoe crab, but just the molted shell. It's 6 o'clock in the salt marsh. The oysters no longer hide. They're out in the sunlight, uncovered by the tide. Oysters hold up the bank so grass can grow. Grass supports the food web in the daily salty marsh show. The sun's going down in the salt marsh. The day is almost through, but if you're back tomorrow, you'll see other changes too. Now here's some fun facts for you. Juvenile fish, the eggs and babies of many ocean fish, are brought by the current into salt marshes. The young fish hide in the shallow water among the grass and feed off tiny plants and animals until they are big enough to swim back into the ocean. The periwinkle snail lives in salt marshes, and some can spend their entire lives on one blade of grass. Periwinkle snails eat the detritus, which are little bits of plants and dead animals, and algae left on the spartina grass by the high tide. The river otter The river otters are found in and near freshwater and brackish water habitats across North America. In the salt marshes, they feed on fish and a variety of other animals and plants. The great blue heron can be found in fresh and saltwater wetlands across North America. They stand still in shallow water and feed on the fish and other small animals that swim by. Oysters are found in coastal waters throughout the world. When the tide covers them, they filter detritus and algae out of the water for food. In the United States, blue crabs are found in the coastal waters of the Atlantic Ocean and Gulf of Mexico. They are scavengers and eat dead animals. With the exception of the Arctic and Antarctic bottlenose dolphins are found in coastal and ocean waters all around the world. They often work together to feed on small fish and squid. In the southeastern United States, they have even been seen in salt marshes knocking fish out of the water and eating them on land. Diamondback terrapins are the only turtles that live in salt marshes. They feed on crabs, snails, insects, fish, and sometimes worms and aquatic plants. Fiddler crabs live in the mud in salt marshes and tidal flats. Fiddler crabs scoop up mouthfuls of dirt and separate the algae for their food from the sand that they spit back out. Horseshoe crabs are found in coastal waters of the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. They live on the tidal flats and at the bottom of the tidal creeks. They look through the sand and mud for shrimp, worms, and other small animals.